Hey guys, how's everyone doing? And welcome back for our daily Algebra 2 lesson. For today's lesson, we're going to be looking at verifying inverse functions. So the first thing we want to do for this one, let's kind of define what's going on. So to determine whether two functions are inverses of each other, so f of x and g of x, we need to find their compositions. If both of these compositions equal x, then the functions are inverses of each other. Okay, so we have this function. So what this typically means is I'll put in an if and then statement so we can kind of have a better understanding of what's going on. If f of g of x is equal to x and g of f of x is equal to x, so if both of these compositions are equal to x, then we know that f of x and g of x are inverses of each other. Or inverses. Okay. To kind of better explain what's going on, let's look at a few examples. Okay, we'll look at one that works and one that doesn't work, and you'll kind of pick up on a little thing here and there to kind of help you out in this aspect. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at, let's say f of x is equal to x plus 10 divided by 8, and g of x is equal to 8x minus 10. So how do we solve this, or how do we set this up? So the first thing we want to do, I'm going to kind of write this out. We want to find f of g of x, and then we want to find g of f of x. Once we find these two things, we can verify whether they're actually if they're actually functions of each, or inverses of each other. I'm sorry. So let's work that out. So the first one we're going to talk about is f of g. So if we have our function, we set it up. F of g of x. Okay, that's just, if I write this out, I can rewrite this another way, maybe to kind of better understand composition functions. We can rewrite this to be f of g of x. So we're going to take whatever g of x is, and we're going to plug it into the whatever the function for f of x is. So that should look like something like this. So g of x plus 10 divided by 8. We're just taking whatever g of x is, and we're plugging it in for all x values of f of x. Okay, so that's where we are. That's where we're at this point in time. So now let's plug in this equation. So g of x is going to be right here, 8x minus 10 plus 10 divided by 8. Right? So those parentheses aren't really doing us anything. There's nothing multiplying or dividing to them, or just to that term. So we can go ahead and get rid of them just because it's on the top. So we can rewrite this equation to be 8x minus 10 plus 10 divided by 8. Doing so, we see that minus 10 plus 10 should cancel each other out. And so we should be left with an equation that states 8x divided by 8. Now once again, those 8's will cancel out with each other, and so we're just left with x. So now we can have this function that states f of g of x is equal to x. So that's our first thing. So we go back to our if statement. That one has been verified. It is equal to x. So we're good to go. So let's keep going. So now I'm going to do the next one. I'm going to do g of f of x. So I'm going to try to do this one, see if I have enough space for it. G of f of x is equal to, I can rewrite that one as well to be similar to this one. G of f of x. And we'll have enough room, so I'm going to come down a little bit. And we're going to take f of x, and we're going to plug it in for all values of x for g of x. So 8 times x plus 10 divided by 8 minus 10. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and we'll work this out. And yeah, so I kind of already plugged it in. I didn't leave it as, so let me rewrite this. So that's going to be f of x. 8 of f of x minus 10. How about that? That makes a little more sense. So now I can come down here and I can rewrite this entire thing. 8 times x plus 10 divided by 8 minus 10. Now, since I'm multiplying by 8 to everything and dividing by 8 to everything in this sequence right here, I can just say those multiplying and dividing will cancel each other out. 8 on top, 8 on bottom, they go away. So these two things go away, and we're left with x plus 10 minus 10. Once again, these parentheses can just go away because we're not multiplying or dividing anything by them. They're just by themselves, so they can go away. So we're left with the function that now states x plus 10 minus 10. Okay. Once again, those two terms cancel out, and we're just left with x. So now we can rewrite this statement to say g of f of x is equal to x. So once again, now we have this statement. G of f of x is equal to x. So since both of these terms have been verified now, we can now state that f of x and g of x are inverses. We verified it. Okay. So let's look at one more example. Okay. All right, let's get going. So this time we're going to look at if f of x is equal to 4x squared and g of x is equal to 2 square roots of x. So once again, I'm going to write out what we need to do. We need to find f of g of x and g of f of x. Okay. So I'm going to take those. I'm going to find f of g first. So f of g of x, that is equal to same thing as saying f of g of x. Which this thing would stop focusing it out. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to plug that in. So we have 4 times g of x squared. Okay? So I'm going to take that, I'm going to plug it in. Stop focusing. Stupid thing. Stay there. So I'm going to take g of x, I'm going to plug it in to this equation. So we have 4 times 2 square roots of x all squared. Now, since these two things are multiplying each other, I can break this squared apart to go to each term. So I can say this is the same thing as saying 4 times 2 squared times the square root of x squared. Okay, to help us simplify this out. Since you're multiplying them, there's nothing else going on, there's no addition or subtraction, we can break that apart. So let's go ahead and square things now. So after I square this out, I end up getting 4 times 4 and the square root of x squared. The square roots just go away, and we're just left with x. So I multiply that out, and I end up getting 16x. Okay, that ends up being the final answer I get for this one. Now, remember, we're looking for f of g of x is equal to x. Since we verified it does not, that means f of g of x does not equal x. So we can then state, we don't even have to do the other one, we can say they can't be inverses because one of them doesn't work. They both have to work in order for them to be inverses. So we can say f of x and g of x are not inverses. Okay. So that's it for verifying inverse functions. That's the end, I guess, of this. I guess the end of this video, guys. Hope everyone's having a really great day, and I hope your week is going really well for us. Okay. Just stay at it. I know sometimes things get a little confusing, but just keep going. Okay. You'll make it through it. I promise. And have a good day. Peace.